A very simple question for you to start. What happened here?
Well, I think the $72 billion in reconciliation that covers the law enforcement, the border security, ICE, the original mission of this bill is something that's exceedingly significant. And it's too bad we're going to have to leave home here and go back home before those issues. You know, the Democrats just did not want to fund our law enforcement agents. And so, but on top of that, the president put some more priorities on there, the weaponization fund and other things. And it just became much more complicated. A lot of questions about what is this fund, who decides, who's eligible, how did it come about, why are we hearing about this now? A lot of uncertainty within the Republican caucus, which I shared. And so I think the leader decided the better thing is to get these questions answered and come back and deal with this when we come back in June.
It's our understanding that the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche was on Capitol Hill meeting with many Republicans earlier today. Senator, can you confirm, were you part of those conversations, and were any sort of potential compromises talked about that we could hear about once everybody gets back into town, like conditions on who would qualify for this anti-weaponization fund?
Well, yes, the acting Attorney General was at a meeting beginning at 11 o'clock. I was there. I also had a simultaneous hearing at the same time, but I was definitely in the room, and I can attest to the fact that there were a lot of deep questions and unanswered questions. The acting Attorney General did his best to answer those questions, but I still think there was some lingering doubt, and I think you see that reflected in the decision to stop the process, get the questions answered, and move on at a little bit later time.
Well, what kind of answers are you looking for, Senator? What kind of restrictions around the use of this weaponization fund would you support?
Well, I think the thing is, we were just made aware of this probably at the beginning of the week, as we're, now on Thursday. Is there a weaponization availability now under the DOJ? That's one of the questions. Has a fund like this ever been constituted? That's another question. Who would be eligible? What kind of parameters? Who makes the judgments? These are the kinds of questions in more specificity that we just didn't see at the beginning, and we haven't really had enough time to digest. So I think a lot of it is uncertainty as to what this is and how and who it impacts. And I think that in the end, as prudent lawmakers, we needed to know those answers to those questions.
So should we expect significant curbs to be put on this anti-weaponization fund? Should we expect it to not be attached to any legislation going forward? What happens here next? Where did lawmakers leave it? Considering, as Kayleigh mentioned, we know President Trump wanted an entire bill on his desk by next month.
Well, I mean, the way I would look at it is the most important thing that the president wants is he wants his law enforcement entities under Homeland Security funded through the rest of his term. We know the Democrats will absolutely not fund our Border Patrol agents, which, by the way, now the border is pretty much sealed off. They will not fund ICE. And these are critical entities in terms of preserving and keeping security here domestically. I think that's the core of what we need to address first, and that's what the president wanted on his desk. And we could have probably gotten it there had we not had some extra things added that we just had questions about. So I don't know where this goes. I don't know that anybody really knows. I don't know that it can be tightened enough to satisfy enough people. I'm sort of in the category of I need to learn more here before I can make that decision. Also, there were questions about the extra money for the ballroom edition. What is that going to be spent for? What really the core Secret Service mission is. The parliamentarian you saw knocked a lot of that out, which created some questions as well. That was just at the beginning of the week. And so I think if you add all of these things together, we're going to lose that core mission, which is funding Homeland Security, which is what we really need to do. And maybe we come back with just that, or maybe we come back with a much more narrow focus on some of the other things.
Senator, we do want to talk to you about other issues as well, but would you be able to confirm that the Justice Department told Republican senators that you too could be eligible for these payouts? What was the messaging around that?
I didn't hear that in the meeting when I was there. As I explained, I wasn't there the entire time.
I did want to quickly mention the parliamentarian, since you brought up the Senate parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough, who has taken out some parts of the priorities when it comes to what actually would fit into a reconciliation package. President Trump has called for firing the parliamentarian. Is that something that you think that this Senate would get on board with?
No, I don't. I don't think that the Senate has a will to or a desire to fire the parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough. She's a professional who's served under both Republican and Democrat leadership. And this always happens in reconciliation, that certain things don't make it all the way through because of jurisdictional issues, because of financial issues. It could be a whole myriad of reasons. And that's why we have a parliamentarian to be able to objectively look at these things. So it's not unusual for things to come out. Normally, you would reshape them and reform them, and then we were in the process of doing that on some of the things that the ballroom issue and things like that. So no, I don't believe anybody wants to fire the parliamentarian. I don't think that would be. I don't think that would be the direction that we would want to go.
Well, Senator, clearly the president hasn't been too happy with the parliamentarians' rulings. He also hasn't been adequately happy, it seems, with two of your colleagues. Senator Bill Cassidy, fresh off of losing his primary to a Trump-backed challenger, or not making the runoff that includes a Trump-backed challenger, failing to endorse your colleague John Cornyn in his re-election race and runoff in Texas. Has he made it harder on himself to even get enough votes for a partisan process like reconciliation?
You know, I think time will tell whether those members that the president has not endorsed and actually worked against in Bill Cassidy's case. I think, you know, it remains to be seen what kind of posture they're going to take. They're both extremely good friends of mine and great gentlemen, and have served our country very well. And I think Senator Cornyn's going to win next week, so I think we'll have him back.
I wanted to follow up on one thing that you mentioned related to the ballroom. Clearly posed an issue when it comes to this reconciliation package. Can you give us any insight into whether or not there were agreements that number would be shrunk from that $1 billion figure? How should we be watching that particular issue? Because we heard President Trump in the Oval Office earlier today really saying how this is critical when it comes to security, since a lot of that funding would go towards Secret Service and securing the ballroom rather than construction of the ballroom.
Well, I think, you know, do I think it will shrink? I think in all likelihood, yes. I think that was the direction that we see it headed, and that's also the direction that would probably help us in terms of getting this through the parliamentarians' rulings and judgments. I think we need to look at this is Homeland Security, it is Secret Service, so what do they need? More technology, more training, more you know, fortifications for that facility, safety, maybe they're building skiffs, and other things. So, I mean, I think the number would be quite robust in any event, but I'm not sure that it would be as expansive and large as what the president has asked for, but that's, again, is not unusual. Many times the president and presidents all throughout the history have asked for certain things that the Congress then uses our will to make those decisions.
Yep, it all comes down to the appropriations process ultimately. Right. And you, of course, Senator, sit on the Appropriations Committee. The equivalent committee in the House, obviously led by Congressman Tom Cole. We got some interesting comments from Chairman Cole about the funding still available to the Pentagon to continue on with our operations in the Middle East. He suggested that could run out in a matter of months. And I wonder how quickly you need to have a supplemental funding request in hand to avoid the scenario of the Pentagon running out of funds to continue this, assuming that a deal is not reached in time.
Right. We do need a supplemental request from the White House. They've signaled that they are going to be putting that forward to the Congress. I think what I'm reading is that the Secretary or the Army and Navy are looking at curtailing certain training missions. I mean, we're in a precarious time here right now where we're utilizing a lot of our forces in a lot of different ways. So training is exceedingly important, along with technologies and ballistics and missiles and all these things that we are using daily. This is an important request that we want the president to come forward with on the supplemental, and then then we can then look at the appropriations process to see how big a number. I personally think we need to fortify our Department of War, and we need to fortify our troops, and that would mean bumping that number significantly, but having a supplemental in front of it would help us determine what that figure would be.
The war in Iran, of course, bumping up consumer retail gas prices. The average in West Virginia today, $4.50. I'm wondering if you could give us any update on, one, where President Trump's push for a suspension, or a temporary suspension, rather, of the federal gas tax stands, and if there's anything else that Congress could do that could help Americans when it comes to facing these higher fuel costs.
Well, this is a real issue. You know, I'm from rural America, rural West Virginia. We travel far to go to the grocery store, to go to school, to go to church, to visit your relatives. We're in our cars a lot, and because of those hills, we're expending a lot of gasoline. And so this hits many people, the ones who can least afford it, the most. And so I hear a lot of complaints. I hear a lot of calls into the office, really feeling the strain of high gas. What can we do? Well, first of all, I think the president is working to do this, and that's to bring this conflict to an end, open up the Straits of Hormuz, and then let global oil be flowing. I think that's number one. It has to be the right decision. It has to be the right agreement for the president. I understand that and fully agree with him, but I think expeditiously that's the best thing we can do. I think we can also work on holding the price down of other things like housing, you know, mortgage rates are still way too high. The cost of food, which also is reliant on gas because you use diesel and fertilizer and everything else to grow food. So this is an issue that I think really hits at election time, but it hits everybody right now. We're going into the summer travel season.